Welcome everyone. Here's the homepage of our localization guide. Actionguide.localfutures.org is the URL. And so this guide is currently centered on our right now 146 actions. And you can find these through two structures in the top menu. So the first one is themes, such as food, energy, and community. And the second menu is actors. So this is where you can find actions that will work well for whatever sphere you're working in, whether it's making changes in your individual life, whether you're working within a community setting, campaigning governments for policy change from the local to the national, international level, working within your small business or through an institution like a school or your university or workplace. So up here, we also have an about page, which shares more about the guide, about localization and local futures, and our FAQ page, which answers some common questions like, will this guide be translated? And how can I suggest something to add? Which was based on our review period with the International Alliance for Localization Volunteers. So scrolling further down on the homepage, we have the same two menus of themes and actors, and you can look for these icons throughout the guide to orient you. And want to give thanks to Brenna Quinlan in Australia for creating these beautiful illustrations for us, as well as the globes at the top. And so I want to go ahead and mention also that these themes are not the extent of local economies. We recognize that several important ones, such as education, infrastructure, health, and more, are absent. We'd like to add those in a future update. We had plenty of material to work with for this first release. So scrolling further down, we have here on the homepage a random sample of actions from across the themes to just give an idea of what those cards look like. So the majority of actions in this guide are related to renewal or building new initiatives from the ground up, but we also have many concrete suggestions for resisting the domination of the global economy and taking policy actions to support those grassroots ones. And related to that, we then have a paragraph on local action and systemic change. And down here, a related quote from Helena. And we expand upon this in the About page over here. So again, this has a primer about globalization, localization, the relationship between resistance and renewal, and top-down and bottom-up changes between policy and grassroots. And then further down, we have more information about local futures with a link of credits for people who helped with the website, contributed to this guide, and link to more resources on Local Futures main website. So I'll go back up to the themes, but before diving into that, I just want to give a quick shout out to Rachel Taylor from Curio Creative and Another Escape magazine for helping us figure out the structure, flow, and copywriting of the whole site. It's a huge amount of information. Figuring out how to organize it was succinctly and sensibly. It was a really massive job, and we really appreciate her work, as well as that of our design studio, Halo, who we'll hear from later. Anyway, so back up to the themes menu. Let's go ahead and take a look at food. So each of our 6 theme pages starts with a quick introductory paragraph. Like the home page, we then have a list of randomly selected example actions, and then a list of topics related to food that we will go into greater detail. I'll come back to these. And then on each of these, we have our 6 big picture essays written by Steve. And so we really encourage people to read these essays in full when undertaking these actions, since they provide a conceptual framework for grounding actions from the very smallest to the most ambitious in the framework of systems change. So picking a topic, say urban farming. So like the essays, each of our topic pages starts with a quick big picture overview. And this is a list of, finally, not randomly selected, but all the actions that we came up with for the topic. I'll come back to that in a minute. So below that, we have 3 additional categories of information to help place the actions in context. So Voices from the Field features video and audio stories from people who really walk the talk and have direct experience with the actions in this topic, as well as for some documentaries, podcasts, webinars, and other audiovisual resources that expand on the topic. So in the policy field, which we have for some topics, explores both policy recommendations for increasing the success of and complementing grassroots action, as well as stories of successful policy actions from around the world. And then finally at the bottom for resources, these are additional written resources such as articles, briefs, and reports that provide more background information about the topic. So let's finally get to these action cards. So here's create community orchards and food forests. So we have a quick introduction at the top of each that again grounds the action in the greater context of localization and systems change. Then for each we have a series of take action suggestions. So these are featuring guides, handbooks, maps, directories, other resources that offer some kind of concrete guidance or suggestions on how to carry out actions related to, in this case, community orchards and food forests. And then each one, as we scroll down the card, has a Get Inspired section, which contains examples similar to those in our Planet Local database. And we've tried to make this as global as possible. So if this one, for instance, has examples from the US, Canada, Croatia, Sri Lanka, the UK, and Australia of successful orchards and forests that are really innovative and each bring a different angle. So a couple more cards in this section. Abandoned and vacant spaces, community composting, starting an urban farm. And then for some of these, you'll see we have policy action. And so I want to mention for some cards, especially the policy actions, the majority of our resources are country specific. When you see these, they'll be marked with either in the US, across the US, like in the UK in parentheses, for instance. If we don't have that, we think and hope that the resource will be applicable to you no matter where you are, or in a variety of contexts, regardless of the country it came from. So we always welcome suggestions for continuing to diversify the resources and examples throughout the guide and increase its relevance worldwide. So we'll definitely encourage you to submit feedback and ideas for additions through our form here on the FAQ page. So yeah, that concludes our tour. The lack of images was deliberate. It's not just that we ran out of time. And so from the beginning, our design studio, Halo, is committed to low carbon design. And we learned throughout this process that the internet is responsible for about 4% of carbon emissions worldwide, and that's more than the entire aviation industry, and it's growing pretty rapidly. So images and video in particular are one of the heaviest users of data and one of the biggest contributors to this system. So the website that they designed without the images, without embedded videos, uses only about 20% of the energy of a typical website. And so that was a deliberate decision, both to decrease the load of this website and this guide on the biosphere and the carbon emissions, and also to promote access for everyone, because also websites with tons of images and video tend to load really slowly, so it makes it less accessible for folks who are on mobile phones or folks in areas that have low internet bandwidth. So both for the environment and accessibility.